What's up, guys? Brett Appley here from dailyfanmma.com, back with another UFC quick picks here on the Mayo Media Network. Going to give you my favorite cash game play, tournament play, salary play, and my fade of the week for UFC Fight Night Smith versus Spann in the main event. UFC Vegas 37, I believe, is the number. Was supposed to be a 15-fight slate. We're down to 14 fights as of now. Still a pretty good card, a lot of options. So not the greatest card in terms of fighter quality, but it's nice to see more than 10 fights on the slate. So 28 options to choose from as of now. Before I get into my picks, make sure you subscribe to the channel, guys, and like the video. Comment below who your favorite play is on DraftKings this week. And let's make it more specific. Who you paying up for in the top end? There are several really strong options, some obvious, some not. Who's your favorite top end play this week if you have to pick one? Let's jump into my favorite cash game play of the week. It's going to be at the very top end here, Arman Tsarukyan at 9.6K. All right, starting with cash games this week, I like Arman Tsarukyan at 9.6K. I think he's, fairly obvious, but there are, like I said, there are many options to choose from in the top end. Tsarukyan is minus 850 to win currently against Christos Giagos, so he is a massive favorite. Inside distance line of only plus 170, so that does limit his upside to a degree. However, he is an aggressive wrestler grappler, and that gives you a very high floor and ceiling on DraftKings. As we've talked about many times, Tsarukyan has fought 4 times in the UFC. He's won 3 times, all by decision. But he has still scored 86, 82, and he's coming off a 126-point victory against Matt Frevola. Again, in a decision, he landed 10 takedowns there. That's the kind of performance I like to see. Whether it's a finish or not, you're going to win the fight. You're going to score me a lot of points. And Tsarukyan's style really fits well for this DraftKings scoring system. And again, this ain't a 50-50 fight. He's minus 850 to beat Christos Giagos, who is a grappler himself. Lands 3.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. But Giagos doesn't really excel on the feet, lands less than 3 strikes per minute. Takedown defense at 50%. That's a key metric here because Tsarukyan in his early UFC career was fighting the likes of Islam Makhachev. He landed 1 takedown. Olivier Aubin-Mercier, who's a good grappler, landed 2 takedowns. Davi Hamosh, who's a world-class submission grappler, landed 1 takedown. But then he fought a lesser class of competition. Matt Frevola was able to land 10 takedowns over 15 minutes. I don't necessarily know that we're going to see 10 takedowns, but I do think Tsarukyan can land takedowns here. He certainly has the cardio to go 15 minutes. And one thing that's troubled Giagos has actually been his cardio. So maybe the first round here is semi-competitive. Maybe Tsarukyan keeps the fight standing. But the longer this fight goes, I think Tsarukyan's going to have a bigger advantage. And even if he can't take down Giagos and hold him down, Giagos just pops right back up. I think he can just go back to the well, land takedowns over and over again. The bottom line is his wrestling equity is pretty high here, as is his chances of actually winning the fight. So Tsarukyan, I believe, is the safest fighter on the entire slate. One of my favorite plays overall on the board, certainly the safest option, certainly where I'm starting my cash game lineups this weekend. Next up, my tournament play of the week. I'm actually going to go with Aaron Blanchfield, who's priced at 9.4K. I think the obvious one was Montel Jackson at 9.5K, and I could talk about him briefly. He's very likely to win that fight as another massive favorite, best inside distance line on the entire slate. I didn't want to give you too obvious choices here coming off the Tsarukyan cash game play. So I'm going to give Blanchfield as more of a semi-contrarian pivot in this top range if you're looking for a little bit lower ownership, because I think Tsarukyan's going to gain a lot of ownership. I think Jackson's going to gain a lot of ownership. Blanchfield, some like her. She's making her UFC debut here, and she's a moderate favorite up at minus 400 against Sarah Alpar, but she's very expensive again at 9.4K. So I think her ownership's going to be a little bit light there. Inside distance line of only plus 185. Blanchfield is very young, and a lot of people really like her as the next big prospect. 22 years old, 6-1 professionally. She's had some decent competition on the regional scene. She fought Kay Hansen. She fought Tracy Cortez. I don't think she's ready to just climb the division and become a champion yet, but she is a very skilled grappler, a decent wrestler, a black belt in jiu-jitsu. She has 2 wins by knockout, only 1 win by submission, but her best skill set is on the ground and in top position. And her opponent here, Sarah Alpar, also likes to fight on the ground, isn't very skilled on the feet, and is coming off just an absolutely brutal loss against Jessica Rose Clark. She tried her best. She attempted 11 takedowns, landed 2 of them, but even Clark was out wrestling, grappling her in her own game. Clark landed takedowns, 1 of 1 attempt, 1 takedown. Clark had more than 8 minutes of control time. Basically, Alpar has some wrestling in her game. She can land takedowns offensively, but she's not the greatest defensive fighter on the feet or on the ground. 32% striking defense thus far, 50% takedown defense. Blanchfield's a tournament play because she's not safe necessarily. Like, maybe she just tries to strike instead of grapple and then we're screwed, or maybe she lands takedowns but doesn't finish and then we're probably screwed as well. So there's definitely an element of risk here, but that comes with, I think, is going to be the lower ownership. And ultimately, both fighters want the fight on the mat. I think Blanchfield is the better wrestler, and she's definitely the better submission grappler. And if she gets on top, I mean, she's probably going to be able to land ground and pound. She's going to rack up control time, and she might be able to get a finish. Plus 185 inside the distance isn't a spectacular number, but when you compare it to Sarukian at plus 170, it's not that poor. And, I do think she's capable of finishing this fight. So we know how important grappling is from a DraftKings perspective. Blanchfield has potential to land takedowns. She has the control. She has the non-significant strike potential and some finishing potential. If she can get the finish, I could easily see her topping the 100-point mark here at 9.5K, and she'll have a chance to end up on the optimal lineup again for lower ownership than I expect the fighters priced above here. So Blanchfield's going to be my tournament play of the week. We'll be curious to see how many people are on her in her UFC debut. Should be a fun fight. Looking forward to that one very much. Okay, moving on to my salary play of the week. I'm going to give out Zhu Rong at 7.6K. I was going to give out Nicholas Mota at 7.9K. He was a minus 300 favorite for 7.9K and had some knockout upside. But that fight was canceled like 30 minutes ago. So the other massive favorite below the mid-range is Zhu Rong. And again, you can't like ignore these metrics. 7.6K, he's like I guess there's a lot of fighters priced below him, but you can save a significant amount of salary by playing Zhu Rong on this slate, and he is minus 290 to win currently against his opponent Brandon Jenkins, who's only taking this fight on a couple days' notice. Zhu was supposed to fight Dakota Bush, but Bush pulled out, Jenkins stepping in. Jenkins has fought successfully in PFL. He has some flashy knockouts, but again, a couple days' notice here. I think that's contributing to Zhu being a big favorite. Inside distance lines are not out yet either, which is quite interesting. The over 1.5 I see is minus 175. I'm guessing, it'll maybe about 50-50 the odds for this fight to end inside the distance. So it's definitely something to monitor as the week goes on, what Zhu's inside distance line is, because if Zhu is plus 120 to win inside the distance, he becomes a much better play even at 7.6K compared to say plus 220 inside the distance. So the better his chances are of finishing, the more exposure I'm probably going to look to play him at 7.6K. The bottom line is we're rolling with the metrics here. There's 14 fights on the slate. There's many options to choose from. I think you have to consider Zhu among the very best fighters below the mid-range just because of these metrics. He's a little bit unknown as far as his skill set. He's so young. I think he's 21 years old. He might be the youngest fighter in the UFC to date. He's earned 11 of his wins by knockout, 4 of his wins by submission. I don't think he's a high pedigree talent, but he's a decent athlete. I think he's going to have physical advantages over Jenkins. He has some power in his game. He landed 3 takedowns in his UFC debut. And Jenkins just doesn't seem like, he seems like a scrapper. He seems like a guy who's willing to engage, but probably doesn't have the best wrestling. and I don't know that he can win rounds consistently in the UFC, whether the fight takes place on the feet or on the mat. So Zhu at 7.6K, I think, is my obvious salary play of the week. He's at worst, he's a secondary player for you, and at best, he could be a primary option for you below the mid-range. He's probably going to be popular, but definitely a fighter you need to target, even if you're not sure of who he is. Zhu Rong, minus 300 favorite, very, very likely to win comparison to other fighters in this range. He'll be my salary play of the week. And finally, my fade of the week for this slate, it's going to be Rocky Pennington up there at 8.7K. And I just think she's a little too expensive for her, expected production. She's only minus 126 to win over Pannie Kianzad. So she is definitely overpriced in terms of her money line. And she's plus 500 to win inside the distance. So very poor chance to finish from Rocky Pennington there. And at 8.7K, I mean, we've already talked about 3 fighters in the 9K range who are excellent tournament options. And in this 8K range, right above her, you got Kudalaba, Anthony Smith, who have upside, Kasangane, who I'll touch on in a bit, Gravely. There's plenty of fighters who have high upside on the slate. Rocky Pennington, she just doesn't land strikes or takedowns in enough volume to consistently score well in decisions. She lands 1.12 takedowns per 15 minutes. So, at best, we're looking for 1 to 2 takedowns from her over the course of a fight. 3.62 significant strikes landed per 15 minutes. She did have a good performance against Marion Renault, but I don't think it's going to be as easy to duplicate against Pannie Kianzad. The bottom line here is, with a poor inside distance line, plus 500. The fight is minus 300, goes the full 15 minutes. On a 14-fight slate, I just don't know if Pennington has enough upside at 8.7K to be worth much exposure. At best, I'm thinking she lands a couple takedowns, 80 significant strikes, and scores maybe 80, 85 points. But at 8.7K, you're probably looking for 100 points realistically on this slate, and I think she falls short in terms of a ceiling. So on DraftKings, Pennington is going to be my fade of the week. One final fight that I'm going to give you that I like, that I think is a little bit sneaky, and I didn't really know how to categorize it exactly, but I'm pretty interested in this Impa Kasanganay versus Carlton Harris fight, because I think it's kind of like a binary matchup in the sense that Harris is a dependent grappler, and he's going to need takedowns. He has to get the fight on the ground. He's going to control you on the mat, maybe get a submission. That's how he wins fights. He has some knockouts on his record, but functionally, I don't think he's a very good striker. And so if this fight does play on the ground, he's going to have an advantage. If the fight plays out on the feet, I think Impa is going to have a pretty sizable striking advantage, both technically and in terms of his potential to win by knockout. So in my mind, this fight is kind of like Harris either gets the takedowns or he doesn't. And if he does, Harris is priced at 7.3K and actually has a extremely good inside distance line of plus 205. So if Harris wins, it's going to come from takedowns. It's going to come from control. We know how well that scores on DraftKings. Plus a plus 205 inside distance line. Harris is a very, very strong underdog play there at 7.3K. And on the other side, if Harris can't get the takedowns and this fight plays out in the feet, I really think Impa has a good chance to knock him out. And on this side, the metrics actually don't indicate it. So I think pretty much no one's going to play Kasanganay there at 8.9K. There's too many other fighters priced in this range with better metrics or who are more obvious. Impa as a minus 114 favorite with a plus 390 inside distance line, I don't think anyone's going to play him. And theoretically, with a few lineups, you could fade him if you want. But because the matchup is so binary, in my opinion, I don't really expect it to be competitive. Like I said, I think either Harris gets the takedowns or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, that will provide a higher ceiling for Impa, and I'm willing to take a chance on him in tournaments. If you're trying to avoid that obvious value stars and scrubs constructions and you're looking for a unique pivot here or some leverage, I think Kasanganay is a decent tournament play there at 8.9K. He'll need a knockout to end up optimal, but he's going to be quite low owned. He'll carry some leverage against the ownership on Harris, and I think is just sneaky for that price. So that's another fight that I'm interested in this week. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week's UFC Quick Picks. Thank you again for the support. You can follow me on Twitter at BrettAppley, TTP, dailyfanmma.com for all your DraftKings breakdowns needs. We got all 14 breakdowns up now. Hour-and-a-half podcast breaking down every single fight on the slate. We'll put up rankings, projections, got a ton of betting content up as well. Check it out, guys, dailyfanmma.com. Thank you again for the support. Thanks for Pat and the team for having us on the channel. Best of luck this week. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.